Dear friends, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is your Gnostic Institute of Esoteric Magic. And today, let's talk a little bit about life as a path to initiation. We're going to complement this lesson a little bit with some intermediate level material that is called the Probationary Trail. But we want to do that to give you a bigger picture, just a more comprehensive perspective on what is that happens here in this life when we choose to live life a little different. And we say that because Samael says, as a school, life is formidable, but to take it as an end by itself is manifestly absurd. These are very impactful words. Most likely because if you're listening to this, it is very likely that there is some particular calling happening within you. And just like that, you have been sampling information from many different sources. Perhaps you have participated in many different schools, gone from a handful of religions, one to the other, and you find that there is something there that you need, but you still find it missing. And if that is what's happening to you, that is phenomenal. Because that means that there is a magnetic center within you that is very active and it's moving you. And in this path that you are, in which, whether you realize it or not, you have been teetering and walking this life as a path to initiation, you're going to come across different schools. There are some schools that are considered schools of kinder for humanity. These schools of kinder, they are very basic schools, and all of the schools that you have been going through, one after the other, make up part of this collective that are the kinder schools for humanity. And these schools are very useful. They are very valuable. In them, you will learn about ethics, you will learn about service, you will learn about kindness, you will learn about so many different things. But as part of these kinder schools for humanity, there are also many schools of black magic. And in those schools of black magic, these schools will teach you how to use the mind to get what you want, how to work and manipulate others so that they can do certain things. I mean, there is so much that can be taught there that it seems so interesting, that can have so many nefarious consequences, but that is presented in such an enticing and inviteful way that we have to be careful. Then there are other schools that are superior. There are schools there that teach you how to crystallize the soul. They seek to work directly with your Buddha nature, your Buddha Dhatu. And in those schools, to crystallize the soul, they will teach you how to emancipate the consciousness so that the consciousness can escape the bottle of the ego and get an experience of up there. This up there is rhetorical, but you know what we mean. So that you can experience the vastness of this creation, so that you can get a feel for that nirvana. Wow, those are beautiful schools. And those schools are transformative. They will impact your soul in such a way that you will feel that you're never, ever going to be the same again. And they are great schools. And then there are schools out there that will teach you how to crystallize the soul, but also how to incarnate the spirits. These are schools of regeneration. And the schools of regeneration will not only teach you how to have those higher experiences of the illuminating void, but they will also teach you how to fabricate the superior existential bodies of the being. So that now, not only you have an opportunity to experience what that is, that you can become a citizen of those higher realms of creation, not just a visitor. So notice how wonderful this is. In this path of life, when we take it as a path to initiation, we will come across all of these schools. And today you find yourself at the door of a school of regeneration. But the thing with this so-called initiation in life is that the path of initiation is secret. It is hermetic. It means it is sealed. It is not for everyone. And the moment that you choose to embark your life in this path, you will go through many experiences. You will go through many things. And you're expected to keep all of these things private because they're very personal. They're very individual and particular. The moment that we start sharing them, whether we want it or like it or not, we're going to start triggering so many reactions in other people, even among schools of Gnosticism. We can find that there is envy for faculties, for powers, for abilities. That exists everywhere. And this is why it is meant to be hermetic, sealed, private, personal, individual. And we tell you about these three schools because Samael tells us investigate, validate, and verify the Gnostic postulates. If you have seen in our website, there are many quotes of Samael saying, don't follow anyone. Follow your inner being. Don't follow me. This is what he says. He gives all of this as a map, and he says, investigate, validate, and verify the Gnostic postulates. And that way, through your experience, direct experience, you start acquiring experiential knowledge. This experiential knowledge is wisdom. And then you will know what is it that works and what is it that does not. And needless to say, if you have been wandering from one school to the next one, you have been teetering with one religion, with another, you feel that there is something there that you're seeking that you cannot find, and that this is answering some of your questions, look at the words of Samael again. Validate and verify the Gnostic postulates as you make an effort to investigate. This is wonderful. So how do you know about these things? How do you know how is it that they work? Well, we go through a series of different ordeals, tests, difficulties, challenges throughout life. And they are all meant to help us define our degree of mastery in whatever given subject. I mean, today, those tests are given to us in the internal planes. In the past, the story was completely different. Samael shares in several of his works the experience that he had in one of his past lives as he presented himself at the doors of a temple in the ancient Egypt. And when he knocked on the door, he heard how those hinges of the door creaked with that low tone in the musical scale. And when the guardian was there, the guardian asked him, "Who are you? What do you want? What are you looking for?" And he had to answer. And when he was brought into the temple, he was disrobed, all of his jewelry was taken away, and he was just given a simple garment. And he was put through the tests of the elements of nature. And this was all done in the physical plane. He was put through the test of fire, the test of air, the test of water, the test of earth, all in the physical plane. He says that in the test of fire, he was walked into a chamber where there were very narrow passages. There were iron beams that were red hot. There were fires, and that there were people who would not make it to the other side. You can imagine some people would feel terror, try to flee, lose their balance, stumble, fall, die. Back then, that was considered acceptable, but certainly in the days that we're living today, that is not. For the test of air, he says that he found himself hanging from an iron ring at the edge of a precipice. Aggressive winds howling. But he had no fear. Others would get terrified looking at that big abyss. And fearing for their life, they would start questioning their abilities, and they saw themselves drop and would perish as well. In the test of water, he would be seeing himself at the center of a lake surrounded by crocodiles. He says that he would be doing conjurations and other things just to keep these dangers away. He would pass the test. For the test of earth, finding himself between two big masses of earth that threatened with collapsing and he would pass these tests. Today, we don't see tests like that. So these tests are given to us in the internal planes. And so, the test of fire may be coming to you with interactions with people that really stir up that internal fire in you and move a tremendous amount of emotions. The test of earth would be looking at you demonstrating your stability in those difficult circumstances, stable as a mountain. The test of water will be the many different circumstances in your life that are asking of you to learn to adapt to the circumstances, just like water conforms to the shape of the container. The test of air, you demonstrating that you have the ability to maintain order, quickness of thought, order in that mind, that the mind is not just random, constantly chattering, projecting like a hurricane. No. So you can see the difference between then and now. But the fact is that those tests continue to take place. And they take place with circumstances, with events, and they also take place in the astral plane when your physical body is sleeping and you unfold, whether you do it consciously or unconsciously, those tests then are given to you in the astral plane. So if you're in a dream and you see yourself in the middle of the ocean and you start getting terrified and wake up, well, likely that you failed the test of order. If you see yourself hanging from a cliff, or in a dream somebody is asking you to jump out of a cliff, and when you jump and you see yourself right in midair, you become terrified of the height and you awaken, well, then maybe you have failed the test of air. And in those tests of fire, those tests of earth, we have to be able to demonstrate our abilities as well. So whether back then or now, we are going through the same tests. And that invites us to reconsider then what is happening in our routine of life. Because our life is mechanically moved by the law of the pendulum. I mean, we think that as we're living here, we have learned about the possibility of this heaven, of this next life, of this peace, of these higher realms of nature. And for the most part, we tend to think that the idea of going back to this paradise, to this Garden of Eden, is something for the future. It's something that's going to happen after we die. And that is an incorrect way of thinking. You and I and everyone else is deserving of experiencing heaven on earth today. We just have to start making some serious changes. And what that is telling us as well in terms of the routine of life is that we cannot continue to live life thinking life is one thing and the internal work is something to do. It's like a task that you will eventually check for the day, whether it is your 15 or 20 minutes or your 1 hour of meditation, or whether it is whatever else that you do. No. Life is the work itself. When these masters are telling us that we have to awaken at every moment, that we have to live from instant to instant, what they're telling us is that this constant self-observation, this constant discipline of the mind needs to be practiced from the moment that we open our eyes in the morning until the moment that we open our eyes in the morning the next morning. So this is not something that is meant to happen later. This is something that we must be doing right now. And that is certainly a huge challenge for all as a humanity. Because we have become intolerant as a humanity. We have this short-termistic view of life where we think that we can consume and take from everywhere without a consequence, that somebody else eventually is going to deal with the consequence. It's not going to be us. You know, we're surrounded by this violence that is violent, that is mental, that is emotional, that we see manifested physical every moment. And because we have this bad habit of looking at things as external, as outside of us, we have come to believe that the reasons for all of our problems exist outside, that it's somebody else's fault, that it is some other condition, that it is not us. And having lost our inner abilities, having been missing our superior faculties for so many lives, not having the ability to make effective use of these divine powers that exist within us for so many different existences, then we find ourselves always judging incorrectly every action that somebody else takes. And friends, this current state that we find ourselves today is what the wise refer to as the scientific and philosophical curse of humanity. What that means is that we have become victims of our own consequences. And we are living through this void of superior faculties that can help us see what is happening, understand the truth behind certain things so that we can step beyond this. This is all an indication that our mind and our creative powers have been working independent of each other, in a disarray, in some kind of vicious downward spiral, where the mind will go in its daydreaming and its fantasies, fueling itself from that creative energy that exists within you. And then that motor, sexual, instinctive center that we have has been consuming energy also by allowing itself to be indulging in the fantasies of the mind. And for as long as we continue like this, we're going to continue suffering the consequences of what has been our blind quest to satisfy our wants, of this endless race to just be satisfying our desires, not our needs. This never-ending run to just get everything that gives us some degree of satisfaction. And what this is saying, if we were to ask you to please just stop your life for a second and look at everything that has been happening around you and observe with some degree of objectivity, you will see that this gives us a very clear message. All of this chaos that we're seeing outside is a reflection of what is happening inside of us. So we have to put things in reverse. We have to figure out a way to undo all of these inferior aspects that are inside of us so that we can restore the flow of that divine force that seeks to harmonize everything. Harmonize you with yourself. Harmonize you with your loved ones, your parents, your children, your spouse, your significant other. Bring harmony between you and your community, you and your state, you with nature, ultimately you with the universe, with your divine being. Something needs to change. And we must undo, uncreate, destroy these inferior aspects that exist inside of us. And you know what these inferior aspects are. They are our gluttony and our laziness, our lusts, our greed, our envies, our angers, etc., etc. It is all of that. But what happens is that every single time that we want to make a change, there's always some force against it. I mean, I'm sure that you have experienced that. There is like an internal conflict. There are inner creative powers within you that are seeking to move against the mechanical forces of nature, and suddenly you start getting all of these external and internal psychological influences. This is the effect of countertransference. And countertransference is one of these cosmic forces. I mean, in physics, they say that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. The same thing happens with this internal work. You seek to make a change and you feel like the world is against it. You want to sit down and meditate, and suddenly there are 15 things that you have to get done before you go to bed. And so you don't meditate. You're making an effort to be of service, to be kind. Suddenly you feel that people are just being annoying and looking at just pushing your buttons. This is all the force of countertransference. Always a force against any effort of inner transformation. And this reminds us of the words of the Apostle Paul in his many letters, in his letters to the Romans. The Apostle Paul says, I don't understand what I'm doing. I don't practice what I want to do, and instead, I do what I hate. Wow. Haven't you seen that happen to you? You don't do what you want to do, these internal things that will change you, that you will like to see happen, and then you go do what you hate. At the end of the day, you remember that you said some things that you shouldn't have, that you wasted your time, and you're not going to get it back by doing. This is it. By the way, if you would like to go look at it, you can find this in the book of in the letters to the Romans, chapter 7, verse 15. I don't understand what I'm doing. This is what Paul is saying. I don't practice what I want to do. I do what I hate. Wow. So even these great illuminated masters, they have all struggled with this as well. And they have emerged successful. And if they have, so can you. So can all of us. So what is it that is necessary? Samael tells us, the one person who realizes they are asleep, they have taken the first step towards awakening their consciousness. Acknowledge that you are daydreaming, and you have effectively taken the first step to awaken your consciousness. What is necessary? We need that type of learning, because that brings a shock into the consciousness. A shock that brings about transformation, something that leads you into an internal revolution. That internal revolution. Let's play this exercise for a second. Please follow us in this one. Should you choose to do so, imagine for a second that in your daily life, you find joy. You rejoice whenever things get difficult. Instead of complaining, instead of blaming, instead of any of those things, that when things get really difficult, that you rejoice. That when someone insults you, when you find yourself in an argument with somebody else, that you rejoice at that moment. But not rejoicing because of being illogical or because there's something wrong with your mind. No. Rejoicing because you realize that that is when you can truly see your defects. Just imagine that. Rejoicing because you see that that is a new opportunity to see and discover something that you have not seen before. When you do this, instead of these many sour events being just difficult and burdensome, we start seeing them as a psychological gymnasium. And suddenly you start embracing the challenges of the gymnasium. And in every interaction with someone else, you see an opportunity to see yourself reflected in their thoughts, in their actions, in their sentiments, in their behavior. And you learn more and more about yourself. Taking this approach leads us into these three factors of the revolution of consciousness that Samael speaks of. These three factors that speak about the elimination of that which is inferior so that we can create that internal time space for new virtues, faculties, powers, abilities, all of these faculties of the being that together they make up that one thing that we are all seeking to have, which is a radiant soul. That leads to the second factor, which is birth, the birth of all of those faculties and abilities. And the third one is sacrifice for humanity. It's working for others. So imagine again that you start embracing all of these challenges, that you rejoice when these things get a little sour, difficult, challenging, because you start seeing new things in yourself. And suddenly, as you undergo that effort, you see the opportunity to refrain on all of your violent reactions. You negate the opportunity to the mind so that the mind does not react violently. so that it does not continue building negative thoughts. Not only you do that, you start comprehending what is happening internally, not only in your thought, but in your emotions, in your sentiments. You start refraining from inferior reactions with your body. Before you realize, your hands are just full of the outcome of this sacrifice, because this takes a lot of effort. And with your hands full, you can then invoke a force that is superior to the mind. At that moment, you can invoke of your Divine Mother and just ask for the elimination of these things that you have comprehended. And every time you invoke of your Divine Mother with this degree of comprehension, she comes and she eliminates that which you have comprehended. And before you realize, the one person that used to come around and you would feel annoyed, it no longer bothers you. The things that you don't know how you would have handled them in the past, suddenly you're navigating through them with a great degree of skill. People start looking at you and they notice the change. But this all must start with a shock of consciousness. And the moment you decide to make that decision, you find yourself at that fork on the road where you choose to continue on the vertical path of life or to sustain the horizontal path of life that you have been living for so long. I mean, all of these reactions that we experience today, when you feel annoyed or resentful or you feel eluded and all of this, these reactions that we experience today are very common. I mean, you experience them, we experience them. They are very real. But the fact that they are common, that does not mean that they are normal. These are abnormal reactions that have become commonplace. And they are the result of a trapped consciousness. This is the effect of a fraction of your consciousness trapped in a little prison that is called anger, in a little prison that is called lust, in one that is called envy and greed and gluttony and laziness, etc. This is the effect of many different fragments of trapped consciousness that is conditioned by its own fears, insecurities, desires, you name it. And if we do nothing, if we choose to not make a change, we're going to remain trapped on this horizontal path of life. And what does that mean? That means that life is going to continue being the same. You will continue going through ups and downs. You will continue reacting to everything that is happening around you. And for the most part, you will continue to tread water just for the sake of not sink, not for the sake of getting anywhere. That is kind of a boring way to continue living life. More so when we have this opportunity right here in front of us. You're looking at it right at the screen. The vertical path that exists as an opportunity for us is what leads us to liberation. And inside each and every one of us, there is a voice. That voice is the voice of our inner Savior. That is the voice that Blavatsky refers to as the voice of the silence. And you have heard that voice. It has spoken to you many times before to tell you, don't do that, or do this. And then after you hear that, you try to start that, and countertransference comes around and makes a distraction. And if you don't break, if you don't fight against that countertransference, then you don't do it. This inner voice guides us through this vertical path of life. And this vertical path is what every great man, every great woman serving humanity has chosen to take. And they have become great paladins of humanity. I mean, Hermes Trismegistus is one of those examples. We see this embracing the vertical path of life in the stories of Quetzalcoatl among those great Aztecs and the many peoples of Central America. We have seen the vertical path embraced by great humans like Mother Teresa, great women like Ananda Majima, like Shivananda. These are all real examples of people who have chosen the vertical path of life, and they all worked on this path at different degrees. Some of them embraced the super dynamic of love that led them to receive Christification. And others, they continued following the direction of their inner being. And they will continue following the direction of their inner being on a path that will rise them, that will take them to experience nirvana and realms beyond nirvana, paranirvana, mahaparanirvana, etc. And those that embraced that super dynamic of love, well, they methodically started fabricating superior vehicles. They restored fundamental faculties that exist today dormant in you and me and everyone else. And with those new vehicles, they were able to become citizens of those higher realms of creation. With a solar astral body, a solar mental, a solar causal body, a solar body of the illuminated soul, the body of Atman, that leads them into walking into the Asilut, which is the realm of the deities and the archetypes. But here before us, the opportunity to embrace the vertical path. And we share this with you because it is okay if you choose to continue on the horizontal path. Nobody's going to hold that against you. I mean, there are many nice things that we can enjoy in the horizontal path, but there are also many negative consequences. And one of them is the effect of the Venenoskirian vibration. The effect of the Venenoskirian vibrations, it happens the moment that we choose just to sit on our creative waters without working them, without transmuting them. Based on the principle of vibration that we know, we learned this from Hermes, everything moves, everything vibrates, nothing stays still. Well, we have to take our creative waters and we have to use them in a way that is productive. Just like you have to use the food that you have in your fridge, because if you don't, it's going to go bad. And the thing with our creative waters is that if we don't use them in a way that is edifying and dignifying to the consciousness itself, well, not transmuting it will allow all those waters to remain available to the ego. And the consciousness, trapped within the ego, moved by the conditioning of the ego as well, will continue using of those waters in ways that are inferior. And so, you don't do anything. You're going to end up using those creative waters and develop faculties that are going to be used for harming others. And slowly you will continue in that downward spiral, out of which the last thing that comes out is just that second death. So we must work with our creative waters, transmute them. And there are many different ways for that. But we're here speaking about life as a path to initiation. This thing on receiving an initiation, what the masters will tell us is, write it on your staff. That means, let us take a look at your spine. The spine, the cerebral spinal system, is the temple of the Holy Spirit. Let us look at your spine and let's see what is the degree of development of that inner fire in you. That is what that means. Write it on your staff. The staff is a symbol of that spine. And Samael tells us, run away from people who sell initiations. Because none of those initiations that you have gotten here, the certificate that you got over the internet, the download that they gave you when you were sleeping from some other country, that is all so superficial. That is all so superficial. Run away from people who sell initiations. These initiations are the gift of our inner psychological trainer. And those initiations, they're not for you. They are for the being. So, now that we have spoken a little bit about initiations, a little bit about the 3 schools that we will find here for humanity, about the need to make an inner change, let me bring to you some intermediate level material. We'll cover it superficially so that you can see what is it that we are anticipating to see in taking life as a path to initiation. Because we're going to start these works with the 3 tests of the guardians of the threshold. There is a guardian of the threshold in the astral plane. Think for a second, emotion. There is a guardian of the threshold in the mental plane. Think mind and thought forms. And there is a guardian of the threshold in the causal plane, in the plane of causation. For us to defeat the tests of the guardian of the threshold of the astral plane, we have to be able to demonstrate tolerance, comprehension, vigilance of our defects. We have to be willing to stare at these circumstances, these difficult moments in the eye and not even flinch. Tolerance before all. The guardian of the threshold of the mental plane is one of the most challenging tests. And as we overcome this one, then face the guardian of the threshold of the causal plane. With overcoming the tests of the guardian of the threshold, each and every one of us will be taken through something that is called the Hall of Fire. And this is a test that must be completed before going through the tests of the 4 elements of nature: air, water, fire, and earth. And that is because these flames will help purify the internal vehicles of the practitioner. Going into the tests of the elements, we must pass these tests to be able to become a disciple. And for as long as we want things quickly, for as long as we want to see results fast, just waking up the next day and being a bastion of patience and we have to go through these particular tests. And in the tests of the elements, again, your mental stability, your emotional stability, your ability to dominate all of those inferior passions, your ability to adapt and flow through circumstances. That is what's going to be tested. Once you go through the test of those 4 elements, you need to embody the cosmic drama. There's going to be a symbolic enactment of this cosmic drama in your life. You're going to have to demonstrate love, sacrifice for others. You're going to have to be able to take your cross and walk up that mountain while people are insulting you, blaming you, judging you falsely, accusing you of things. And you must be able to do that successfully. Because once you go through that, at that moment, you find yourself at the door of the initiation of the minor mysteries. And this initiation of minor mysteries, there are 9 of them. And you can complete them. You don't have to be married to complete them. You can complete them even while you are single. And there is a tremendous progress, development, growth of the consciousness in its awakening just by going through these tests. But there are 2 other tests beyond this. Guardians of the threshold, Hall of Fire, tests of the elements. The symbolic enactment of the cosmic drama, the 9 initiations of minor mysteries. This is plenty of walking in that path. And then you have to go through the test of justice. You'll be insulted, slandered, there'll be calumnies raised against you. And this all will happen as you're undergoing these tests. And in between all of these happening as well, there would be the tests of Dairini. And these tests will put to the test your ability to remain faithful, loyal to your being, not giving yourself away to inferior passions to satisfy carnal desires. You need to demonstrate chastity of the mind, chastity of sentiment. You need to be able to exercise that chemical chastity, where rather than just refraining from entering in intimate contact, you have to be able to take that creative water and transmute it and use it. This is all part of that path. And that takes you to the door of becoming a disciple. At that moment, you have the opportunity to becoming a disciple of those major mysteries. But we will leave the conversation on major mysteries, those major initiations, those 3 mountains. We're going to leave that for a later time. For the time being, we put together our material today from The Perfect Matrimony, the 2 versions. The first one from 1950 that is called The Perfect Matrimony of Kinder, and then the last version edited in 1978, The Perfect Matrimony, the books The Revolution of Bell, The Secret Annotations of a Guru, and Some Good Learnings from Esoteric Course of Kabbalah. Friends, this is what we wanted to share with you in terms of life as a path to initiation and the probationary trail. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. May all beings be happy.